Dr. Gao, and a little pot of orchids. My father had a friend named Dr. Gao. My father deeply admired Dr. Gao, who was a very learned person in Chinese culture. His hobby was growing orchids. During one of our visits to his home, when I was about 7 or 8, my mother told Dr. Gao that I was a little gardener too. When Dr. Gao heard this, he laughed and told me that I could have any plant from his huge garden as a present. I had lots of fun searching around and finally found a tiny orchid plant. The plant had one large pink flower. When I brought the little pot to my mother and Dr. Gao, their faces turned pale. My mother asked me to pick another plant. I nodded and turned to search for another orchid plant. But Dr. Gao stopped me. He insisted on giving me the plant despite protests from my mother that I was just a little girl. He handed the pot back to me and said, "I don't go back on my words." Later, I learned that this was a very precious orchid plant. Dr. Gao had only 2 such plants, the mother plant and my little plantling. Lessons I learned from Dr. Gao. Some 20 years after this, Dr. Gao made a speech at my wedding. I felt so very touched and honored. I am very blessed to have known Dr. Gao. He is one of those officer-class people who have influenced me and whom I aspire to become. Dr. Gao showed me so much respect even when I was just a little girl. In those days, people had many children and getting an individual present was already something very special. He let me choose my own plant and then kept his word to let me have it even though it was something very precious to him. He taught me the importance of keeping one's word and being a trustworthy person.